Hello, I'm Linda Graham, author of Resilience, Powerful Practices for Bouncing Back from Disappointment, Difficulty, and even Disaster. In this series of conversations on resilience, you will learn from many experts offering practices helpful to them in recovering their own resilience. In this conversation with Richard Miller, we're learning practices to recover from trauma by turning inner enemies into inner allies and by rediscovering the wholeness and well-being innately present in each of us that helps us hold anything that ever happens to us. Welcome to this conversation, exploring resources for recovering resilience. Today I'm talking with Dr. Richard Miller. Richard is the founding president of the iRest Institute and the co-founder of the International Association of Yoga Therapy. He's the author of Yoga Nidra, iRest Meditation, and the iRest Program for Healing PTSD. Richard is recognized as a leader in the field of meditation, yoga therapy, and mental health. He conducts research on the iRest protocol that he's developed, and he teaches retreats, workshops, and trainings internationally, emphasizing enlightened living in daily life. Richard and I have taught together, exploring the neuroscience of the transformations people experience through iRest practices. Richard, welcome, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today.
Thanks, Linda. Always a delight to be here with you.
Thank you. So if we see resilience as capacities to face and deal with the challenges and crises of life, our capacities to cope skillfully and effectively with everyday disappointments and even disasters, do you have examples of you or people you know who've had to bounce back from something challenging? And what was helpful at the time to cope resiliently?
You know, over the years, I've worked with thousands of veterans. In my private practice as a clinical psychologist, I've worked with many people who've been through grave illness, accidents, car accidents, plane crashes, all sorts of challenges, we'd say, that really challenge us at a very deep human level for a resilient, as you call it, bouncing back. And I've found a number of principles that are really helpful in working with people who are facing these kinds of traumatic incidences in their life, some which are one time, but I've had the honor to work with people who've had multiple and very serious traumas over many years in their lives, especially people coming out of military experiences. The one piece that I think is really important as I've worked with people, because we know trauma in essence can disconnect people from themselves. They can feel broken and something is wrong. To help them understand there's something basic about themselves that actually has never been hurt, never been harmed, doesn't need healing. So in a first session, when I work with people, I try to help them understand this deep, innate inner resource, which we all carry within us, so that by helping them get in touch with it, they understand immediately that we're not doing the healing work to get back to a sense of wholeness, but we're healing from that innate sense of wholeness. Then from that place of wholeness, we can address what does need healing, fixing, changing in the body and the mind.
Well, do you have a specific go-to practice that pretty reliably helps you or helps your clients cope resiliently?
I do, and I'm thinking a woman who came in after many, many years of severe depression. She had been to multiple psychiatrists under many different kinds of medications and treatment programs. And so in the first 30 minutes of meeting her, I asked if she would be willing to make an experiment, which she agreed to. And so I introduced her to what I call a basic ground of being. We all know within ourselves at different periods of our life where we've been able to, I call it taking a moment of refuge, a moment of inner sanctuary, a moment of time out, where we're just basically easing back into a sense of being. And I have a protocol that I ask then out of that sense of being, if you were to describe being, how would you describe it as a sense of location? people are able to say it feels like it's heartfelt, centered in my body, and yet it feels more like a field that also encompasses my body and reaches out into the space around me. People quickly see when they come into a sense of being, they step out of time into a kind of a timeless moment, and they quickly see that being is beyond a sense of lack or need or want. It's also familiar, although they understand they may not nourish it much, and it's independent of their circumstance. So it helps a person immediately glimpse something within themselves that has always been whole, I would say forgotten, but now pulled back into conscious awareness. And it has a somatic felt sense about it that we can then develop and nourish and anchor into as an inner resource of, I call, unshakable well-being. Then what I do is I have a person look at the circumstances that they're working with. It might be grief, or in this case, depression, or the traumatic memories. And we interweave that sense of unshakable well-being with every emotion, every memory, every experience. And we slowly, we call titrate their experience a little bit at a time so they don't get overwhelmed by their memories or the depression, with that sense of well-being. And it really becomes a vital inner resource that then they're able to carry into their life. And just out of interest, the woman said when she came back for her second visit, you know, that feeling of being and that sense of wholeness, it disappeared quite quickly after I left your office, but it gave me a sense of hope that there was a way through my depression. So I began every session with her, as I do with most of the people I work with that sense of being. And over a period of 2 years, her depression was able to clear. She was able to really establish that ongoing sense of well-being in her daily life and take the actions she needed to do to clear the depression.
Wonderful, wonderful. So do you recommend clients cultivating these practices, cultivating their resilience and their sense of being and well-being before there's a major stressor, before there's an emergency?
Good point. I think we need that kind of proactive, welcoming and nourishing, and as you say, cultivating these elements like well-being before the crisis hits so that they're well established and can help us navigate the crisis and the challenges that life is always going to bring into our lives. If we wait until the crisis, it's more difficult to bring that sense of well-being to the surface in the midst of the circumstance. So absolutely, little and often, as you know, every day, all day long. It's the first thing actually I do in the morning when I wake up. I'm lying in bed and I nourish that sense of well-being along with whatever else I may be experiencing. So that's what I want to carry with me all day long. And as one veteran said, after a while, he realized he wasn't needing to nourish and cultivate his inner resource of well-being. It was now nourishing itself all day long and coming to him when he needed it. So he was no longer having to remember it. It was now remembering him.
Beautiful. And I do try to practice that myself as well. And this may already speak to the next question I would ask. What do you do or recommend people doing when they're really stuck, overwhelmed? The resilience seems nowhere to be found. That nourishing just isn't happening. Maybe they can't even remember it or believe in it. What can you recommend then?
You know, beyond food, shelter, clothing, safety, those primary needs that Maslow showed us so well in his work, I think there are 4 other basic needs we all have: to be seen, to be heard, to connect to, and to have a sense of belonging. So I think it's vital that we utilize social relationships. When we're with another who we feel safe with and we can share what is going on with us, it can nourish that sense of deep connection and being seen and being heard, where the circumstances may be pushing those kinds of thoughts and feelings out of our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So I think social relating is a very important aspect where we can meet with a friend, have tea in their living room or kitchen, meet with a therapist or a meditation teacher, but someone who we can share our experience. And so as
Mm-hmm.
we're sharing it, we feel deeply seen, heard,
Yeah.
connected with. And I think then that mirrors back into us this deep sense of resiliency that is there,
Mm-hmm.
but it helps draw it back to the surface where we may have lost touch with it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So in the few minutes remaining here, do you have any additional thoughts or insights about resilience? Meaning, are there things that are important about resilience, but often we don't think of them or we don't associate them with resilience?
I have this belief that everything we experience is a messenger. Every emotion, every sensation, every perception is a messenger that when we're able to stop and listen, it's actually there to help guide us in actions we need to take. So fundamentally, when we're overwhelmed, sometimes we're trying to just push the experience away. But by learning how to welcome it in, and that often takes sitting with another that helps us welcome it in,
Yeah, yeah.
we can appreciate the sensations that a moment before may have felt overwhelming, the emotions that might have felt overwhelming, the thoughts. They now become actually allies.
Mm.
We enter into a different relationship with our body, our senses, our mind, and our emotions, where they're actually allies that are actually here to help us on our way. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a shift in perspective. Sometimes we can lose that perspective, and if we can regain it through our own inquiry or sitting with another who helps us regain it, I think that goes a long way towards helping us reestablish a sense of resiliency.
I agree with everything you've been sharing today, Richard. Thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your wisdom. Very, very much appreciated.
You're entirely welcome. May this benefit the many, and may your work continue to grow and benefit the many.
Thank you. These interviews are posted, archived on my website, lindagraham-mft.net. May they be truly useful to you and yours.